Okay, welcome again to the new episode of Naturang Batas. I'm your host, Jemy Gatdula. Since the show is on Naturang Batas, the topic that we have today is on natural law, naturally. And we hope to discuss what is natural law, why is it that so many people seem to be against the idea of there being a natural law, and is it true that natural law has buried several philosophers and lawyers in the past already. Now, to help us discuss natural law is one of our best friends at the University of Asia Pacific as well. And he's a man we call Father Ces, because that's his name. No, seriously, his name is Father Ces Magsino. He is a priest at the Opus Dei. And at the same time, he has received a doctoral degree from the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Definitely a very qualified person to discuss the topic now. So let's just go on to the heart of the matter. Father Ces, so what is natural law?
Well, so to define what is natural law, we'll have to understand first what is law. What is a law? And I'll give the definition that St. Thomas Aquinas gave for it. So he said that natural law is an ordering of reason. Then the further qualification, he said it is something that is made by somebody who has the authority to make a law. It is for the common good, and it is promulgated. So that definition of the law fits what we call natural law or Naturang Batas. But then, why is it called natural? So what makes it natural, or what makes it different from any other law? Well, so to understand that, I think first I will have to clarify that what we're talking about here, the natural law, is not a code, which many people think that's what the law is. A set of rules, a set of laws that are gathered together in a piece of paper.
It's not a code like the civil code.
A code. So some people think, so it's a code that you have law 1, law 2, law 3, law 4, like that. Because natural law is not that. It's not a code. But it is identified by the conceivers of this concept ever since antiquity. It is identified with human right reason. So when human reason works correctly, and the reason that we're talking about here is not just any reason, it is practical reason and it is right reason, then that gives us what we call the natural law.
How is natural law to be distinguished from the law of nature? I've heard of somebody once asked, like for example, if somebody, for example, gets a rock, and then that rock is thrown at another person, that person will definitely get hurt or have a headache. Is that a good illustration of natural law, or it actually pertains to something else?
That's what you can call a law of nature. But what we're talking about here is not quote unquote laws of nature, but we call it the natural law. The problem is the word nature has different meanings, and nature, for example, can mean everything, the whole of creation. We call that nature. Or nature can mean the essence of something. Or nature can mean the physical part of something like man, the nature of man, his biological nature, and so forth. But here, when we say the natural law, we're not talking about laws of nature as in laws of physics, laws of chemistry, and so forth. But we're talking about a law, an ordering that affects human life and what is good and what is evil in human life. So it's a very, very concrete concept and a very concrete law that applies to human beings insofar as their life, their actions are concerned. And it has to do with goodness and with evil. And this law is innate in him because reason is innate in us, and this law is given by reason. And insofar as it is in reason, inherent in reason, that's why we call it natural. It's natural to man.
So essentially, you're talking here of a set of precepts because of the fact that man can use reason. Kumbaga, nag-iisip siya. And therefore, from here, you can determine whether or not this is something that's good for man.
That's right.
And this is something that's not good for man.
That's right.
Sa tao. Which seems harmless enough. I mean, I think it's kumbaga logical or reasonable man lang isipin na ang gusto ng tao is gumawa ng mabuti, umiwas sa mali. But how come ang daming tao, mga aktivista and what have you, especially in the United States, and now that we're introducing this concept or reintroducing this concept again of natural law sa Philippines, a lot of people seems to be against the idea of a natural law. Why is that?
Well, so it seems to me that the demands of natural law, which is the same as the demands of the truth about man, are perhaps not very acceptable to many people. And that's why they will not accept the natural law. Because...
If I may stop at that point, but all laws naman make demands eh. What is so special about natural law that make people hate it such?
Well, so its demands seem to be not very, you might say, acceptable or easy or fashionable or and so forth. So because the laws that some countries right now might be promulgating precisely might contravene demands of the natural law or might go against the natural law because that's it, what the natural law might tell them what is right and wrong is not very perhaps easy to accept, or it's not very...
It goes against the fashions of the day.
The fashion or the trend or the culture. So examples of laws against marriage, like the gay civil marriages or same-sex unions.
Marriages, yes.
Or
even I think against with regard to contraception.
Also,
it would be said that natural law prescribes or prohibits the use of contraception.
That's right.
That's right. And I think we'll get to we'll discuss that more in detail later. But I do remember you saying earlier, you were mentioning something about natural law. Kumbaga, from the times of antiquity has been there. What do you mean by that? I mean, how old is natural law ba?
Well, I would say that natural law is as old as man. As soon as man came into being and could reason out, then he already has in him natural law. But on record, natural law is very, very old. The oldest reference that I can give for this is the play Antigone of Sophocles. He wrote it in 442 BC, even before Christ. Because in that play, the character Antigone was going to be given the death penalty for violating a law given by the king, Creon. The king said, "You cannot bury your brother who died." But then she defied the law and she buried the brother. And then so she was caught and she was going to be given the death penalty. And then in the trial, so the king asked, "So why did you do this if you knew the law?" Then she answered, "Well, I didn't know that a law made by a human being can contravene a law that is higher, that is made by the gods. You can think I deserve death. You can think I'm a fool for defying your law," which I was not afraid to do because I was more afraid of defying the law of God.
So in effect, you're saying Antigone was the very first recorded example of civil disobedience.
Yeah, and recourse to a law that is given to her not by a human authority, but by a divine authority.
Sophocles, I think, would be the first one recorded in history. I think there would be others, sila Cicero.
There's Cicero,
and then
there's Plato,
there's
even
Aristotle, Martin Luther, I think eventually would also
Martin
make
Luther
reference.
King.
And then Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, even these all other people would make reference to natural law.
That's right.
And the interesting thing about it is that none of these guys are actually Catholics.
That's right.
They are either coming from certain religions or what have you. But for some reason, which we will discuss when we come back after the break, is that natural law has been almost considered as identical to or synonymous with the Catholic Church. And we'll try to understand why that happened when we come back. We'll just take a break for our sponsors, assuming we have sponsors.